views and opinions expressed on Explorers Secrets of the Truth or that of their guests or contributors are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent. All information on Explorers Secrets of the Truth is provided in good faith. However, we make no representation or warranty of any kind, express or implied, regarding the accuracy, adequacy, validity, reliability, availability, or completeness of any information on this talk show or website.
From monsters and ghosts to otherworldly beings, join the explorers as they venture into the darkest realms seeking the truth to what goes bump in the night.
Good evening and welcome to Explorers of the Truth, episode 52. Tonight, as always, I'm joined by my best friend and co-host, Les Sinkavich. I made it through without laughing.
I'm proud of you. I'm
So how are
very
you
proud
doing
of
today,
you. Awesome. Really good. How about you?
Doing pretty good.
That's
Getting ready
good.
for my vacation.
Oh, I can't go wrong with that, man. We got back from Mars a couple of weeks ago, like I said the last couple of shows. So it's your due, my friend. You're due.
Yeah. So how about we go through our normal spiel for the evening? How about you let everybody know where they can reach us and contact us?
Sure. You could comment here live. If you're watching us on Facebook, if you comment under the show, it'll come in live. Hey, good to see you, Moon Joey. We got a comment coming in from Facebook from Moon Joey, one of our repeat listeners and viewers. You could also, if you're watching us live on YouTube, because we are live on YouTube now, excuse me, you could comment under YouTube and we'll see those comments live as well, and we could interact with you. You can find us on Twitter at Explorers Group. You can go to our website, explorersgroup.com, where you can see past shows and learn a little bit more about Chad and I and what we do. Because we're more than just a talk show. We do investigations and research of the paranormal and cryptozoological fields and ufology and any kind of weird story that rolls down the pike. We always kind of get our hands in the mix. So we got a bunch of people writing in here, and we appreciate that. Hello, OS is here, and Thomas Cooper is a new face. Thanks for joining in. Cryptovania is in the house. That's awesome. Welcome. So that's about it. That's where you can find us. Nope. And then people are commenting in. That's wonderful.
So our topic for tonight is going to be about the Phoenix Lights, or what becomes known as the Lights over Phoenix, which were a series of widely cited unidentified flying objects observed in the skies from Nevada all the way to Arizona. The main one we're going to cover tonight is the March 13th, 1997 event. But again, in February of 2007, this happens, a similar sighting. And April 21st of 2008, there was another sighting. But tonight's main topic is going to be the original sighting in March of 97.
Mm-hmm. The namesake sightings, I guess, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. God, these headphones, man. If I can get these things to fit comfortably and not push my ears into my the arms of my glasses, I'd be happy. So we're going to be talking about the namesake sightings for the Phoenix Lights, and I guess we'll start back in the beginning. On March 13th in 1997, a pilot reported, I was flying his son Oliver to go see his girlfriend, and we were on approach. Russell explained, I saw 6 lights over the airport in absolute uniform in a V shape. And Oliver said to me, I was just looking at him. I was coming in. We're maybe a half a mile out. And Oliver said, Pa, what are those lights? Then I kind of came out of my revere and I said, I don't know what they are. He said, are we okay here? And I said, yeah, I'm going to call in. And I reported it.
So what you're telling me is one of the initial sightings comes from Snake Plissken, the legendary
yes.
Burton.
Yes, Escape from LA and Escape from New York, I guess, is the sequel, or vice versa.
Well, you got to go with the Jack Burton quote, I'm a reasonable guy, but I've experienced some very unreasonable things.
That's right.
Or my all-time favorite Kurt Russell as Wyatt Earp. You're going to die first. Get it? Your friends might get me in a rush, but not before I turn your head into a canoe. You understand me?
Can you hear me?
Ever.
Can you hear me? I think my video feed cut out.
I can hear you. You are kind of frozen though. So
yeah, I don't know what happened to my video. Technical difficulties. Wouldn't be our show without them.
Yeah. So, getting back to Kurt Russell being one of the, first reports of this incident at the airport. And like he said, he basically didn't think anything of it until he noticed his wife, Goldie Hawn. I don't know if they're technically married, but I don't think they are. That was a big thing. They're not technically married. They've been together for a million years. He didn't think anything of it until she was sitting watching a TV show the one day, and it happened to be discussing these lights over Phoenix and the time frame. And he just had that like Close Encounters of the Third Kind moment with Richard Dreyfuss, where he was like, "Oh wow, I was part of all that."
I'm sorry, buddy. I'm trying to get this camera to come through. I don't know what's going on here.
Yeah, all I'm seeing is your GoPro webcam, like generic screen.
Yeah. But I'm gonna try something else here. I'm gonna try and revert back and see if I can get my laptop screen to come through, because the GoPro for whatever took a crap on me.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go.
I'll see you again. So
all right,
let's get into the timeline of these events here, Les, and I think you kind of are going to cover that piece for us.
Yeah, the first sightings of what would be known as the Phoenix Lights happened nowhere near the valley. A V-shaped object as big as a 747 was spotted 285 miles to the northwest over Henderson, Nevada, and at approximately 7:55 p.m. It then reportedly headed southeast, crossing Arizona in less than 40 minutes. Sightings were made along the way in places like Paulding, where a retired police officer saw a cluster of 6 or 7 lights, in the Chino Valley in Prescott by 8:30 p.m. It hit Metro Phoenix. Sightings increased exponentially, although details began to differ.
Okay. So I'm going to get into the kind of the details of what eyewitness accounts are of this, first group of lights, generally the same. It was a series of lights in a chevron or a boomerang shape. Some people say triangle. But the lights, they also differed in color and quantity and movement. Some people, stating that they had like very bright lights. Some said they were more dim, not really casting an outward light. They were just kind of like almost like a recessed light on some of the stories. Now, one of the things that they point out is it was silent.
Mm-hmm.
Very, no, next to no sound whatsoever. And some people, depending on where they were at the time of the sighting, neither claim it was really high up in the sky, or some people even say it was just basically hovering above the city within a couple 100 feet of, ground level. Now, also the actual description of what people could see on the underside of the craft, some people said they saw a structure underneath it. Some people said no, it was more of a flat, smooth surface. So, varied, but yet very similar, different amount of lights. And, again, that could go down to where they are viewing it from, the ambient light around them and all that.
Well, even the people's reactions too during these encounters, they differed as well, ranging from eerie to awestruck, and a few experienced a certain feeling of serenity, and some freaked out.
Yeah, which I mean, if you saw a gigantic mile-wide set of lights hovering over your city, some people are going to be like, "Oh, they're finally here," and some people are going to be like, "Oh shit, they're finally here."
Well, even like you said, like they were described seeing an underlying structure. So you had the lights in the V pattern, but they also saw like a darker outline around the edges, correct?
Yeah, they could kind of see like the shaping of it, not just the lights, but like kind of the edges of the object.
Right. So I mean, if I were witnessing that and I were looking up, and it's one thing to just look up and see some lights. I mean, you could say, all right, well, maybe it's drones or lanterns or, you know, military, you know, flying some sort of a pattern or something like that. But when you see the lights and then you see like the underlying or outlying of a larger craft or structure, well, yeah, that would freak me out completely. I'd be terrified, to be honest.
Mhm. And you know, one of the things is there are a lot of UFO sightings in Arizona, and I
Mhm.
was able to find some quotes from Shane Hurd, who is the assistant state director for MUFON.
Mhm.
And he said, you know, one of the things he had said was, I think some of the reasons might be because we have very clear skies, and when the weather is good, there's a lot more people out, so there was more opportunities for stargazing at that point, and for something that was up there to be seen.
True, true. And you got to figure also, like down in the Southwest and more of the desert areas, it's not quite as populated. So if they're going to come to this planet and they want to be discreet and not really seen, what better place to go than a remote desert area? You know what I mean? And
Mhm. Yeah, well, you think about it, like New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, there's a large, you know, swath of land where there are next to no people,
mhm.
you know, for, you know, miles and miles and miles. You know, if you wanted to do something, even as a person, if you wanted to do something super illegal, the area to do it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And you go back to the Native American stories in those regions and stuff like that, date back centuries, and it's, you know, all kinds of weird stuff happen out in the desert. You know,
Well, and even in this area, there are the pictographs that,
yeah,
you know, depending on how you interpret them, there are some that seem very similar to at least modern interpretations of, hey, it kind of looks like people and a spacecraft or a UFO,
right.
or, you know, some kind of being that doesn't quite fit with the rest of the beings coming out of what appears to be like a bright light drawn, you know,
Hmm.
etched out. I guess I was going to say drawn. I don't know technically.
Scratched. Yeah. Well, Dr. Lynn Katai, director and executive producer of the Phoenix Lights documentary, stated, "My husband and I have a house nestled in the mountains by the Arizona Baltimore resort, and have these good, clear views of the valley. In 1995, I managed to get a strip of 35 millimeter photos of these oval orbs I saw arranged like a pyramid outside of our home." So, I mean, you have uh, what do you want to call them? Educated, for lack of better terms,
Mhm.
or
You-
scientific. You know what I
yeah.
mean? These doctorate doctorated people that have a certain level of intelligence, you know, making claims too. So it's not like you had made the comment in one of the past shows about that McDaniels. You know, what is
Mhm.
his credibility? You know what I mean? What is his mental state? What is his character like? You know, so typically you think a lot of these people are like crackpot, you know, loonies and stuff like that. But then when you have, you know, for lack of better terms, you know, educated or, you know,
Well, yeah.
not so,
Yeah.
yeah, more credible people.
Yeah, definitely. So, like, the lights aren't just a one-off thing then either.
Right, right, right. Sorry, I needed some water. But yeah, no, in fact, in January, 2 months before the mass sighting, Dr. Katai filmed this mile-wide group of six lights hovering in the distance at 1,000 feet over the Class B restricted airspace of Phoenix Sky Harbor International Airport, which is
Yeah.
interesting.
Yeah. So also, Class B restricted airspace is a 30-mile circle from the center of the I don't know if they technically say from the center of the landing strip or from the center of the actual airport. So it's a 30-mile loop that not even or military nor private can enter without communicating with the towers at that point. So
So which no, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else stated further on in the show, and I don't want to jump the gun or anything, but it kind of makes me wonder if this is a restricted airspace and in a 30-mile radius, and people are seeing this well within that area, that restricted area, for extended periods of time, wouldn't there be other like planes, like official planes or something out to dispatch that object encroaching into that space?
Well, and see, that's the thing, because some of the eyewitness accounts do discuss seeing military jets flying in those areas at those times. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, the military turns around and says, no, we never scrambled anything at that time. There's no records of flight logs. Um, so yeah, I mean, if you're inside restricted airspace, there is going to be some kind of alert set up. There's going to be some kind of deterrent put in your way. You're not just
Mm-hmm.
going to fly into those areas. But that's also one of the things where if these lights aren't just a one-off, if these, you have the orbs that people, see,
Yeah.
like the doctor had said, um, if you're seeing those on a regular basis in
Mm-hmm.
those areas, um, are they going to, if it's a normal occurrence, are they really going to be scrambling fighter jets to run them off? Or are they going to do we can't figure out exactly what's causing it or what's doing it, but we know it's not causing issues with air traffic coming through.
Or is it coming from there?
Yeah. So yeah, there you would think within, I mean, 1,000 feet above ground inside of restricted airspace, something should be done to deter that object or, remove that object from that space. But
Yeah, that's very close.
yeah. Now, we're going to get into some of the eyewitness accounts. And one of the ones I pulled here was a David Sankey. He's a Tempe, Arizona resident. And this was his story on this night. Me and my friend Aaron were cruising down US Highway 60, taking two female friends home from Apache Junction all the way up to 32nd Street and Shea Boulevard. And he says, we were probably around Alm School Road or McClintock Drive when the female friend in the front passenger side seat said, hey, and I'm sorry, folks, I'm just quoting, hey, what the fuck is that? Yes, we have to put the not safe for work thing on here now.
Yeah.
It was out the right side of the car. We saw these lights and we're all looking at each other like, is this really happening? Or is it something out of an ET or an alien movie where they make contact?
Mm-hmm.
So they're,
Well, go ahead.
just, basically a normal, I would assume probably teenage 20-year-old, somewhere in that neighborhood. I mean, they're out driving around with two girls and they just happen to see these lights all of a sudden. I could imagine, driving at night and all of a sudden somebody saying, hey, what the hell is that? And you kind of start looking and all of a sudden you're trying to diagnose what it is. And all of a sudden you're like, your brain comes to that conclusion of, oh shit, that's in the air. That doesn't look like any plane or anything we recognize, because you're by an airport. I mean, I live 30 miles from one airport and planes fly over all the time. I live about probably 60 miles from a Army or Air, I think it might be Air Force flight area. And on weekends when the guard and stuff is on duty, you'll see jet fighters zoom through this area.
Jeez.
It's not every weekend, but you'll see them. So you recognize, like, even at night, like, oh, hey, that's, probably one of the fighter planes or some fighter squadron out of the base. I think it's about 60 miles from here, but they fly through here and up like Indiantown Gap.
Yeah.
The A-10 Warthogs, the Chinooks. We grew up seeing all that stuff. So,
True.
You see some kind of light that doesn't fit those known characteristics. It's got to be one of those is this real? Is this some kind of like, punked,
Yeah.
punk type thing where somebody's messing with you at night?
Yeah, it does make you wonder, and I wonder when in relation this because we couldn't find a date on that one. And I
Well,
wonder.
this is the March 13th.
Oh, this is the March 13th.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. I didn't see it listed right in that note, but I was assuming it was within that timeline. So,
Yeah.
and this was all in conjunction with, at the same time, all these other witness reports were coming in. So
Yeah, these
there's
are
obviously
kind of a rolling. People start seeing it outside of Phoenix, out towards Tempe. They start seeing it closer to Phoenix. Actually sitting in the middle of the city, people are seeing this at that point.
yeah, and it's rolling through a vast area of land within a certain time frame. So,
well, it covered, I think, like they said, about 230 some miles in like 40 minutes.
yeah, I think it was 285. I think, wasn't it? Yeah, it was spotted 285 miles to the northwest over Henderson, Nevada, at 7:55, and then in less than 40 minutes. Yeah, so it was like a 285-mile span.
Yeah.
So, well, another eyewitness report, John Vanderlyn, another Tempe resident, said, I was about 7 and we were swimming in our backyard pool in Glendale with my dad. He glanced up and said, what the hell? And we all looked up and you could see 8 lights in a V, and it looked like it actually blocked out the stars. That, I think, is pretty interesting. Then it said it actually sparked quite a fascination with UFOs and extraterrestrials. That, I think, is really cool, that the fact that they're seeing these lights, but it's also blocking out any kind of stars or lights above it.
Yeah.
Which I think is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Kind of gives you that like mothership kind of feel, you know what I mean?
Well, and also kind of as somebody looking at that, if I can't see what the sky, like when you look up at home, you kind of know, like if you sit on your back porch and you look up, certain stars, time of year are around here.
Right. You can kind of track them.
Yeah. If you looked up and it was a crystal clear night out, and all of a sudden you saw 8 lights that seemed to only be a couple hundred feet above you, and you couldn't see the stars behind them, it kind of gives the object some, it gives you a reference point of, hey, it is closer to me than it is away from me. And it also gives you the thought of, there's actually something there. If it's blocking out, a star or the stars you're used to seeing at that time of year, you kind of, it gives you that sense of, there is actually something in between me and that star.
Right.
Besides, billions and billions of light years. But
true.
now that was some, those two were basically, just some everyday people that eyewitnessed this event.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of found this anonymous statement from a pilot from Southwest.
Mm-hmm.
And he basically goes on to say, I was a pilot with Southwest Airlines at the time and was living on the west side with my wife. We had just left a restaurant and I had her stop and pull off to the side of the road. I got out and kind of stood by the car, and it was kind of flying directly over us. I'm looking up and I'm trying to think of how to explain it to her, because I'm going, well, it might be, it's like a C-5, which is a large military transport. Then I go, no in-air collision lights, no strobes, and it's moving really kind of slow. They actually look like can lights, like recessed into the surface. There were 5, and I wouldn't say they were glowing. They just weren't bright and didn't have any harsh incandescence to them. So now here you have a guy who's a pilot who knows, flight procedure. You're going to have your in-air collision lights. You're going to have the strobes on the tail. He's not seeing any of this. And he's also, he's going to be familiar with, hey, if I'm standing on the ground watching a plane, I know about how much space it should cover in the amount of time I'm watching it.
Right, right.
So now that's, I mean, we were saying about more educated people on these subjects. Because a lot of times, as we find, a lot of these eyewitnesses are not well versed in science or, certain, principles.
Right,
Here's a
right,
guy who would be well versed in everything aeronautical. Like he's
right.
a pilot. He's, he knows something ain't right with what he's looking at.
Hmm. Very good points. Yeah, because I mean, he's rattling off everything on a checklist on, all right, well, is it this? It's not that. Is it this? It's not that, So he clearly, had run the gauntlet of uh, trying to decipher what kind of craft it is and, obviously what kind of craft it isn't. So
Mhm.
that I thought was really interesting. So I like that report um, from another pilot. I thought that was freaking awesome. And the size that he was referencing too. So I mean, he's clearly got it pegged, to for comparisons and whatnot. So, and then there's also a statement from a Phoenix Police Department operator, 911 operator, Verily Nieneman. Um, it started out the operator, I guess the call goes, it started out slow, and then all of a sudden we were getting lots of calls, and they were all regarding strange lights in the sky. The calls came in very steady for about an hour. Everyone seemed calm and was saying it was either the V shape or 5 lights or 7 lights over the Sierra Estrella Mountains. And then in the 24 years I worked here, we'd got an occasional call or two about strange lights, but nothing like that night. So that too is pretty interesting when you have that time span um, of that area. You have some lights coming through, like reports, but
Mhm.
nothing like this. So I mean, there's obviously a slew of people had witnessed this.
Kind of give you an idea, just in Phoenix alone, about 10,000, now not actual calls to 911, but
Mhm.
the estimate is about 10,000 people in Phoenix actually witnessed this event.
That's insane.
Yeah. 10
That's not some random,
Yeah, that's not 5 people. That's not even 100 people, 1,000 people. This is 10,000 people looked up that night and saw somewhere between, say, 5 and 8 lights
yeah, yeah.
floating in the sky. It, you know, if you want, could you pull up the picture of the lights in the skies, kind of give people an idea of what people were seeing?
Yes, that would be. Let me let me find it.
Yeah, so
Hold
while
on.
Les is looking for that, you got to think 10,000 people. I don't know. I'm assuming Phoenix is probably over 1 million in population easily. So you got 10,000 people out. Um, can you the night shot with just the lights in the sky?
Oh, yep. Sorry. Let me get this one
Yeah.
out.
So you got all these people seeing this. This photo we'll talk about in a minute. Um, and you've got, yeah, okay, there we
There
go.
we go.
Yeah, you've got these lights basically coming across your city at night. Now, there I see about 6 lights, maybe 7, the way those 2 in the front kind of might be 2 separate lights.
Hmm.
But you're seeing that come over the sky, you know, in the middle, it's not even that late at night. It's not like, 2 in the morning and you got 10,000 people leaving bars or, events in Phoenix and they're going, "Oh, you know, we're seeing these strange lights," and you got some people that might be of questionable character at that hour. You're looking
Right.
at this event basically, depending on what window you look at, started around 5 p.m. that evening, and up until about 2 a.m. people were still reporting, lights and objects and you know um orbs in that area. So this is the main sighting though. This is the lights, and that is actually taken from a film that
Hmm.
was shot. So now we're going to get into kind of how this story gets weird. I mean,
Mhm.
weird in the human sense, not weird in the, hey, what is that above our city sense.
Mhm.
So there was her name was Frances Emma Barwood. She was the Phoenix City Councilwoman, and at the time she was the vice mayor. And one day on May 6th of 97, she was going into the council meeting and was stopped by a reporter. And she was asked, the reporter asked her if I knew what the object was that flew over Phoenix on the 13th of March. And she said, I can ask in the meeting.
Mhm.
And when it came turn for her counselor's request, I told them about the reporters, what she said. And then she said, could we find out what the object was? And she said, basically, it was like everybody just turned and looked at her like she did something completely wrong.
Mhm.
Like just random, like everybody just stopped dead in what they were doing and just started staring at her like, oh, you done screwed up there, AA Ron.
Mhm.
You know, so, she kind of kept pushing the issue a little bit. And of course, by her pushing the issue, it got a lot more local media attention and the tabloid style shows like back then, Extra. I don't even know if it's still on TV. Um, but it also kind of put a target on her back because she ended up losing her political career over it, just by asking that one question. But it was kind of nobody was giving a real response. It was kind of like, it happened, we'll get back to you.
Yeah, yeah.
Went from March, and this basically meeting was in, I believe, yeah,
May.
May. So they basically swept it under the rug, like, if we don't bring it up, we don't have to address it.
Right, right.
She ends up bringing it up in a sense in a forum where there are records kept. And I
Mhm.
think that's probably why the kind of the other politicians and everybody involved just kind of stopped and were like, why did you say that in here? Like, why
Yeah,
would you
yeah.
say that right
Why
now?
bring it up? Yeah.
Yeah. So, and also it's one of those things, she ends up losing her career. I mean, she was the vice mayor at that point.
Right, right. Yeah.
It's a pretty, substantial step in, especially for somebody who might, have political aspirations. She was on her way to, some higher positions, and she ended up,
Mhm.
by asking a simple question, end up tossing it all away without the intent of, hurting her career.
Right, right. Well, if we jump ahead about a month after that, on June 18th in 1997, USA Today ran a front page brief complete with an artist's depiction of a boomerang shaped craft teasing an inside story about the Phoenix Lights. It turned the sightings into a worldwide phenomenon overnight, and that was the image I had mistakenly brought up before, but this is it here. The networks continuously played the snippets of footage available from the sightings, which was the previous image we had showed you, including Katai's camcorder video of the flying V formation. Dr. Katai just left them have her video and put it out there because she wanted as many people as possible to see it.
Yeah, so I mean, there it shows like she didn't do it for any financial gain. I mean, if she's releasing it to everybody, I worked in television media. She wasn't financially gaining from it. She was, here, make the copies, run the stories, use the video, sign in the releases for use on it. And there's only one or maybe two videos that are known of the incident,
Mm-hmm.
including the doctor's footage. And you got to think, like, back in 97, consumer grade cameras they weren't even digital yet at that point. Everything was
Mm-hmm.
on some form of tape, some type of drive. And, let's face it, the cameras from 97, not the best quality
No,
video.
no, not at
You're
all.
talking, our cell phones now shoot better quality video than those
Oh,
things did.
absolutely, absolutely.
So,
And another interesting thing there too is that that was a doctor putting their reputation on the line to try and put it out there to have people, view this.
Yeah, and well, I think when you have 10,000 people in one area who all say they saw something similar, like I said, it could be anywhere from 5 to 8 lights,
Yeah.
superstructure, no superstructure, you know, this color light, that color light. You
Mhm.
know, I think at that point there was a lot of people who were putting themselves out there for the simple fact of wanting to know what was I looking at.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. They're all asking the same question and
yeah,
getting zero answers.
yeah. So I think, yeah, I mean, she put her career on the line by, being attacked. I mean, you could give the video to the people and say, just don't use my name.
Right.
She was
Exactly. You get
willing,
anonymous. Yeah.
yeah, she was willing to put herself out there. Um, you know, so you have a lot of people that were probably stepping out in that sense of it's kind of could be detrimental to me, but also if it was you or I were out driving on a back road
Mhm.
and we see a bright light land in a field and we're missing 20 minutes of time the next time we look and we're down the road or on the wrong road somewhere else,
Yeah.
people are going to go, yeah, you probably don't want to talk about that in public.
Right. Right.
If 10,000 people see it,
Yeah. That's like a city,
yeah,
a whole city's worth of.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're dealing with, like, um think 70,000 people is the size of the city of Roanoke, Virginia.
Mhm.
You're looking at basically 10% of those people. I'm not doing the math in my head, but you're
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
at, a large percentage of those people seeing the same thing that night.
Right. Right.
You know, so stepping out there, but I think it's easier to step out when there's a large group because you do get the doctor, you do get the baseball coach, you do get the high school principal, but you also get the guy who works, in the factory. You got the guy, the garbage man, and not knocking anybody that does any of those jobs. They're all very needed.
Mhm.
But, you're getting
Blue and white collar mix.
yeah, you're getting a sample size of people that aren't, you know, you can't pick somebody, you can't take the doctor's credibility and pick it apart. The same
Right.
as you could take the guy who digs ditches and go, that dude barely made it out of the ninth grade, and he wouldn't understand the difference between a satellite and a star.
Right. Right.
So now, the nationwide media attention then also starts to put the pressure on the local, state, and federal politicians to investigate this sighting.
Mhm.
So, you get days after the USA Today front page, the then governor of Arizona, Fife uh, Symington,
Mhm.
announces this emergency press conference.
Yeah, Symington's news conference was anything but serious after declaring state officials had found the guilty party behind the sightings. His chief of staff, Jay Heeler, was perp walked to the podium dressed as a gray alien in handcuffs. Before unmasking, everyone in the room had a good chuckle. And here's a picture of that news conference video.
Yeah, and this was a spontaneous. I was actually watching one of the news reports from when it happened. You could tell even the reporters were pissed off at
Mhm.
because this was an emergency press conference. This was called, like, be here at the guy was like, basically we were told to be here by 5 p.m. or whatever. Governor's going to give this emergency press conference. You have all these people lugging all their equipment in, all the camera crews, the mics, getting reporters on scene. You got the radio stations with their equipment, with the recording equipment. You got newspaper reporters. And of course, now you got everybody trying to make a deadline.
Yeah.
Everybody, you got to break the news first. You got to have the first live shot coming out of that meeting. You got to have the first photo up on your, well, back then you really weren't even that big into websites, but nowadays you would be. You'd want, the first blurb getting out there, your cell phone alerts going out first,
Mhm.
because you want to be the premier station to cover this. And I watched the one video, and you could just tell the reporter he was professional, but you could tell he was upset.
Right.
Like this is also a waste of public money.
Yes.
Like this
Yeah.
this staffing and all this stuff for this meeting came out of the public fund for the city or for the state. So it shouldn't have been something that was taken as a joke
Right.
or portrayed as a joke. So you know Symington, he eventually is on. There was a show called UFO back in 2021, and they had an episode about the Phoenix Lights. And of course, he says, "Well, I didn't see any harm in what we were referring to as the alien caper, since it was meant to de-escalate the growing frenzy over the sighting." So basically, hey, I don't see anything wrong with what I did. It
Mhm.
was a joke. If you can't take a joke, so be it.
Right. Right.
And of course he goes on, we weren't trying to ridicule anybody's concerns, but there was elements of building hysteria, which we really needed to deal with. I'm sorry I offended people, but it was a lot of fun. So basically, he kind of smugly politically says, yeah, okay, I'm going to tell you I'm sorry because this is the proper thing to say to you, but at the same time, it's really not. I'm going to do it basically to make you feel good, but I'm really not sorry. It's sorry, not
Yeah.
sorry.
Sorry, not sorry. Yeah.
Yeah. And, Barwood, who had basically thrown her career away, she kind of believes it was an attempt by him and his administration to kind of steer clear of the ridicule she got for bringing up the question. Like it was one of those, hey, I'm going to diffuse it with some humor and kind of throw people out of the wanting to really know what's going on. If we laugh it off, then people will kind of go, oh, well, maybe what we saw was, just some weird, weird thing that happened. And, my life went on.
Right. Right.
Now, he eventually, it's about, a decade after the actual, 97.
Mhm.
He claims in an interview that he slipped out of um, his security detail on the night of the sighting and joined a crowd of skywatchers at Squaw Peak and witnessed for himself the V-shape formation flyby. And he's actually now kind of come out and been one of these, yeah, I saw it. I slipped my security detail, which I wasn't supposed to do. I drove my own car, which I wasn't supposed to do, and I saw it, and you know, I just couldn't come out and say it back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's kind of good reasons why he couldn't say it back then, and I'll get into that in a minute.
Mhm.
But he does go on to kind of say, he was hearing the reports, he was watching the news, and the stuff was starting to pop up, and he told his wife, I'm just going to take my car, go for a drive up there, and see what all the hubbubaloo is about. And when he gets there, he actually sees it, and he was like, "Holy cow! Look at that! Like, what is that?" And
Mhm.
he said it was a great big delta wing shape, and came out of the northwest, headed southeast through the valley, and you know, so he eventually starts to admit that he personally witnessed all this stuff.
Mhm.
Now, the reason why one of the probably the reasons why he didn't bring up this whole thing back then was at the time of the sighting, he was under federal indictment for 21 counts of extortion, bank fraud, and making false financial statements. And he's quoted as saying, "It was a fairly tumultuous time for me politically, and I certainly didn't want to pour any kerosene on the fire."
Mhm.
So he went on to say, "So the next day I kept my mouth shut." And, years later, he was actually convicted of 7 counts of bank fraud, which was overturned on appeal in 99.
Oh, Jesus. I love Moon Joey's comment here. We don't have any good clear footage of the pics because Bigfoot was the pilot. That's you can't get any better than that.
I still love the Mitch Hedberg. Maybe it's just Bigfoot's blurry.
Yeah, yeah. It's not
Yeah,
the camera or bad
yeah,
pictures. That's just the way it looks.
yeah. But, you know, th- I was watching something earlier that brought up the whole cameras. The government releases this like Tic Tac video.
Yeah.
And of course, we get like an infrared and different versions of the Tic Tac video.
Mhm.
But yet they release stuff that has 4K, 8K, quality all the time from the space agencies and from just government institutions. And yet the only footage we can get of a UAP or whatever they call them now
Yeah, yeah.
is, you know, infrared or, some other system. But yet we have 4K cameras also on those planes. Why are we not seeing that footage? Because,
Right.
oh, we would be able to tell maybe that it isn't what they claim it is, or it's something that they already know has been here for years, and enough of us have seen it to say, hey, we've seen something. Yeah, well, maybe we got to start telling you a little bit here and there, but we're not going to give you good quality. It's like every time they release a, hey, can you help identify this person who's robbing this Dollar Tree or Dollar General?
Mhm.
You couldn't get worse footage if you went back to 1860, got that camera, told the guy to stand there and took the photo, because the quality of these cameras, like I said, our cell phones shoot better video, and yet the security cameras for most places are the grainiest,
Oh,
low quality,
garbage.
low resolution crap. And yet these people are spending thousands and thousands of dollars on these security systems.
Mhm,
You
mhm.
know,
And this is on a military fighter plane.
yeah, which has 4K cameras on it, 8K cameras on it. So the fact that they're only releasing these infrared and,
Mhm.
it definitely, because you can watch some of the military stuff where, they're using ISR drones and they're showing, I mean, to the point of you can see what the label on the person's shirt says,
Right, right.
at night yet too. Like, it's not like, oh, it's only during the day we have this great no, at night, in these foreign countries, they're able to fly these drones through at thousands of feet and tell you, oh, that guy has a Nike label on his shirt that's that big.
Right, right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, it makes they're only letting you see what they want you to see. That's just how it is, you know.
Yeah.
But back to the story of Symington. He claims that as governor, he inquired with officials at Luke Air Force Base about the possibility of military exercises or flight maneuvers being mistaken by witnesses as alien spacecraft. Two explanations cited by debunkers over the last 25 years. In the case of the V, Mitch Stanley's observation of multiple planes flying in formation have been accepted by many skeptics. Uh, as for the 9 glowing orbs near the Sierra Australis, then Lieutenant Colonel Ed Jones of the Maryland Air National Guard told the Arizona Republic in 2017 it was caused by A-10 warthogs dropping parachute-equipped flares while conducting exercises at what's now the Barry M. Goldwater Air Force Range near Gila Bend. And a Solar Impulse 2 solar powered aircraft fly into Goodyear Airport in 2016. The profile was remarkably similar to the V shaped plane. The way they did the lighting and its silence, and it was about the same too as the reports. So it might have been something like that.
Yeah. So now when you get into the flares, there have been, you know, they've basically been able to debunk the whole flare theory through the, comparative video and photographs. When flares are dropped, they have, first of all, they're parachute flares.
Mhm.
So they descend at different speeds and they don't stay in formation, and again they descend. They don't drift, in a line across an area.
Yeah.
But there was an anonymous source that says, I was in the Army flying Hueys in Vietnam. Then I went into the Air Force. I flew F-15s and fighters for 17 years. I can say is absolutely not aerial flares.
Hmm.
They would not stay in formation, and they would move and fly really slow out of sight. And you don't fly around in V-shaped formations at night.
Hmm.
Um, so, you have somebody again who is a well versed in the subject matter of flight, military flight.
Mhm.
Of course, they refer to this military testing. It was Operation Snowbird. Um, it was a pilot testing, that they were doing in that area. The Maryland Air National Guard was using it, and so they always kind of throw back, oh, they were dropping flares. Not saying that they didn't drop flares that night,
Right. Right.
but I grew up around A-10 Warthogs, you know, planes like that. They're very distinct when you see them. They're not, you would recognize one if you saw them.
Mhm.
You grew up around them too. They fly out of the gap.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, you have other people that were saying like those orbs were spread out evenly, so it looked intentional.
Yeah.
Planes, aren't going to necessarily hold the same exact formation over that amount of distance. And like these objects stayed at the same height. They didn't look like they had parachutes. And when you watch a parachute flare, you'll see the light and then you'll see the trail going up,
Yep.
and you'll see it'll sometimes illuminate up to the actual parachute canopy.
Right.
Also, when
Right.
you drop them, they start drifting down, and one's going to stay up here and start drifting slower, and it's going to, spread. So you're not going to have
One's going
that.
to catch a different current than the other, and they're
Yeah,
all going to lose shape after a while.
yeah, they're not gonna cross the city. And first of all, why would you drop flares? These things are 3 foot by 10 inches, and they burn. And one of the biggest things with them, that the reason they don't test them a lot of times, is because of the chance of fire. Also,
Right.
you wouldn't
In
drop them.
in a dry desert
Yeah,
area.
and you wouldn't drop them that close to a city due to civilian casualties.
Right. Right.
There's a chance they are 3 foot, about 10 inches round, and they burn. And they can,
Right.
and people even in the military, like when they do use them, they're like, oh, there's times they hit the ground, they're still burning. There's no like, oh, they just went out all of a sudden. No, they burn until they go out.
And
So
it still doesn't explain the outline of the primary craft.
yeah, nobody, it doesn't address what people saw. It's just a, hey, if we throw something out of say that 10,000 people, 9,950 of them aren't going to know the difference.
Right.
We'll throw that out there. But also, you got to think that Luke Air Force Base is relatively close to the city.
Hmm.
The Air Force Base has been there since before World War II, around World War II.
Uh-huh.
If they were dropping flares, people in the city would be used to seeing them. They would have an idea. Also, if the military was doing stuff like that, I'm sure they probably would put something out in the paper, like, or the local news, like, hey, this month we're going to have increased flights at night due to some military training. You know, it
Mhm.
wouldn't be just randomly all of a sudden like, oh shit, yeah, we were doing this training, so yeah, that's what y'all saw.
Yeah. Another great comment by Moon Joey says, "I've seen multiple flare drops in Colorado at the Peterson base near Cheyenne Mountain. They're always over the military airspace,
Yeah.
and he's never seen more than 3 at a time, and on calm nights only, making them come straight down in about 15 to 20 minutes."
Yeah.
So they're not, you know, multiple lights spread over a mile wide area, and they're not all coming down in unison, you know what I mean, like, and they're not
Yeah,
over residential areas.
yeah. The military is not going to purposely test over residential.
Right.
You know, they may do flyovers, but even like I said, when the fighters are flying over, they're flying through sections of unpopulated, you know, they're flying, you know, by a house, but it's a house with, you know, 100 and some acres. So they're not flying directly over your home. They're flying, you know, over your property.
Mhm.
And, you know, they're not dropping stuff.
Right.
Even when they do test runs using the mountains and stuff like that, they're not, unless they're in a, you know, um, military, you know, fire range, they're not even testing like, hey, can we actually hit that target? They're just using the valleys and the mountains for, hey, can we actually fit in this? Can we do the speed we need to be doing? Can we maneuver? You know.
That's true. uh did you cover that next part that you had in your section there?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to jump ahead another a year to a later event on April 21st in 2008, where lights were reported over Phoenix by local residents. And these lights were reportedly appeared to change from square to triangular formations over time, which that kind of makes me think it could be a flare kind of situation if they're going to be changing shape and moving around. Because if you're looking at them at a certain height, at a certain distance, and they're kind of moving, you know what I mean? If they're coming down at different times, they might appear to be changing shape or formation, but they're just kind of moving, you know what I mean? Because you're looking at the perspective is going to be changing. Are you I think you're frozen. Oh, I was wondering why you're so quiet. Well, I'll just keep reading this report until Chad comes back or unfreezes. Chad, try, if you could hear me, buddy, try signing back in. I'm going to close you out. Oh, wait, maybe you're coming in. I don't. Nope, he's out. Try signing back in, buddy. Let's see. So, a Valley resident reported that shortly after the lights appeared, 3 jets were seen heading west in the direction of the lights, which is kind of what I was talking about before, where I said, why wouldn't any military jets be sent out after the supposed lights or objects that are encroaching on that airspace? Um, oh, is he back? Let me get him into the stream. There you are. Froze out there
Sorry.
for a second. No, that's fine. That's fine. I was just going on. I said about the lights appeared. Jets were sent out after in the direction of the lights, and an official from Luke Air Force Base denied any U.S. Air Force activity in that area. And on April 22nd, the next day in 2008, a resident of Phoenix told a newspaper that the lights were nothing more than his neighbor releasing helium balloons with flares attached. This was confirmed by a police helicopter. The following day, a Phoenix resident who declined to be identified in news reports stated that he had attached flares to helium balloons and released them from his backyard. And that became known as the Phoenix Light Incident of 1997, consists of the 2 unrelated incidents, although both were the result. Should I be reading this part, or is this the part that you wanted me to?
Yeah, let's not go into that because I actually
Okay.
found some really interesting stuff that has nothing to directly connect it to the Phoenix Lights incident,
Mhm.
but in Scientific America in July of 97, there was a 10-page story about a gamma radiation burst
Mm.
that was seen by the Lacaille telescope in Chile and the Hubble telescope.
Mm.
Okay. When it was first sighted, it was 450,000 light years away. Within 20 minutes, the next images they got of it,
Mhm.
it was in our solar system.
Within how? 4 minutes?
20 minutes.
20 minutes.
Okay. Now, when the gamma burst, when it shows up on these images, is a bright point of light. Okay.
Mhm.
But there's a background trailing object in both images.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And well, there again, they could take pictures of stuff light years away and get a clear picture, but we can't get a clear picture off these military planes. Did you freeze again? Try logging back in, dude, if you could hear me. I'm going to close you out. Well, hopefully he could get back in here because our show is hit the hour. We're actually 2 minutes past the hour, so we're gonna have to be wrapping this up quick. So I hope he comes back to end out the show with me. I'd like to hear the rest of his report that he had there with the gamma blast or gamma flare that he's talking about. I want to hear the ending of that. But for those of you who have been following the show tonight, we appreciate it. This was a show on the Phoenix Lights, the reports from back in 1997. And then there was still follow-up reports up until about 2008. Here, I think he's coming back. And we'll show him in the stream. There he is. Okay.
Okay, I have a thunderstorm rolling in. That's why this is doing this.
That's okay. That's
okay. So that same night, March 13th, 1997, a communication satellite we had in orbit gets knocked out. Now, of course, you might say, oh, well, the chips, got fried by the gamma radiation. Problem is they were chips that shouldn't be fried by gamma radiation. They're actually made for gamma radiation. So we lose a communication satellite the same night. That all is happening. And basically that was two things I found that were not even, no one, really connects to these incidents, but you have also the Hale-Bopp comet was this time of, in the, 97, which if you remember the Heaven's Gate cult said there was,
yeah.
They believe there was a UFO behind the comet.
Yeah.
There was also a guy who had taken images with a CCD camera system for a telescope and said there was something trailing behind the comet. In fact, he called Art Bell that night that he found it and said, hey, there's something behind the comet. And of course, everybody started saying, oh, there's UFO. And then other people were like, no, that's just, a star that's showing up behind the comet. But, so this is all stuff that, happens around that time. We had weird weather patterns that popped up in different places in that.
No. Right when the story was getting good, he pops out again. Try one more time, Chad, if you could actually hear me yet, because you really dropped out quick that time. And we'll try and wrap up the show because it is 9:35. We are 5 minutes past the hour. So here he is back again. We'll try and get him on and wrap up this show quick.
The worst
Here
thing
you are.
The worst thing is that whole time I could hear you talking. My camera dropped out and I could hear you perfectly fine. I don't know what that was, but yeah. So that was some of the weird shit I found, not necessarily connected to the Phoenix Lights, but actually happening the same night.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have this unexplainable object You know, I want to call it a singular object, even though there were multiple lights. I mean, with the, like we were saying, how the shape was seen kind of around those lights, I would say that it was a singular object, you know. So you have this large, mile wide, mile long object that came into restricted airspace, and then that gamma flash and an object trailing behind the comet and satellites getting knocked out. You start connecting the dots, and there's too much going on at the same time.
Yeah,
Moon Joey has a good comment there. He says the aliens don't want Chad talking about it. I don't know about the aliens, but somebody doesn't want you talking about it. They're cutting you out, buddy.
Yeah, I have the weirdest thing with my phone. Not even going to get into it because it always gets weird. But I will talk to one of my other friends about like weird stuff that happens, and we will both at different times hear somebody else on the phone. Like
that is weird.
Like a background conversation, or all of a sudden the phone will just drop the call. So not getting into all that. I don't think it's anything specific, but it is weird at times where you'll almost hear like the line clear, like some.
There, you're cut out again, buddy. They don't want you talking about it. It's the government tapping into our show. Oh, there, now you're back, kind of.
And the worst thing is I can hear you this whole time.
Huh.
I don't know what it is, but we probably should wrap it up because it is 9:38 and we.
Yeah. So anyways, tonight's episode was episode 52, the Phoenix Lights, the mystery of the Phoenix Lights. Chad put this show together. I think you did a great job, dude. I really enjoyed tonight's show. It was a great discussion. And as always, I love talking with you, man, every other week now.
Yeah. It was fun. I'm glad you guys, hope you enjoyed, I know you enjoyed the show, but I hope everybody else did.
Well, at least Moon Joey did. He was the only one commenting. Yeah. Well, we had a couple people checking in, but Moon Joey, as always, buddy, you're always coming in with some good comments and good information. We appreciate that.
Yeah. So, well, good night, everybody. I hope you all have a great week. We'll be back 2 weeks.
2 weeks from now.
Yeah. So I'll be on vacation next week. So you guys all have fun. Be careful. Be safe.
Do we want to say the topic that we're thinking about for the next show?
Yeah. What the hell?
Yeah. Well, we're planning on doing, as long as everything goes accordingly, we're planning on doing the next show on Hans Holzer, who is a historical paranormal investigator from the 60s, I would say. From around about the 60s is when he was in the peak of his career.
I think so.
Worked with a few different mediums to communicate with the dead. So we're going to be kicking it back to the paranormal now that we're back in action. And we're going to be talking about one of our favorite paranormal researchers, Hans Holzer. So hopefully in 2 weeks, we'll be able to cover that. Yeah, so like Chad said, it was a great show. We appreciate everybody's attendance and viewership. And if you do not mind, those of you on YouTube or even on Facebook, go to our YouTube page, like and subscribe and share. Share us on Facebook. Share us everywhere so we can get the show kind of ratings up a little bit. But for those who do tune in regularly, we love you guys and thank you very much. And we'll see you in 2 weeks. So talk to you later, brother.
Yep. Talk to y'all later.
Bye.
Bye.